In this video, we'll have a look at the material editor inside of Unreal Engine 5. We'll check out the details panel, talk a little bit about this output node, and have a look at the palette. Then in the end, we will create our own material. It's already pretty complex, and then we apply it to the meshes in our scene. If you are familiar with the general aspects of the material editor, then feel free to skip to the next video. Otherwise, let's get started. Welcome to the project files of this project. You'll be able to download this for free on fab.com. It should be linked together in the video description and also on the community hub, where you can also find all of the material. It is split up into different folders, and there's a folder for every video that I want to do. So 10 folders in total. And for now, we're going to get started by having a look at very basic materials. So every time I'm going to open up the map that comes with the lesson, and then talk about what I want to talk about. And this first one is really basic, right? We have this environment, there's 3 cubes here. I can click any of these meshes, and if we check the details panel, we see that they have a wall or a floor assigned to them. Now, when I press play and I shoot at these cubes, they are dynamic objects. They can bounce around, and so I don't really want them to have the same color as the floor. So I'm going to create a new material from scratch. And I'm going to do that by pressing right mouse button and then going to material and select a new one. I'm going to call this M_ for material, which is how we usually name those, and then name it dynamic. So when I open it up, I get this new window. And if you're new to materials, then this is probably overwhelming as a game designer. But if we take a little step back and we have a look at what we're presented with, we can see very clearly there's overlap with blueprints, with anything you place into the level. There's similar naming, similar setup, right? There's this thing here. This is basically what makes that final image, what gives it the final look. This is a little preview here. So if we were to change the base color, for example, to red, it would now be red in here. And if we select this output, this final image, then we also have a details panel. And similar to how we have a details panel when placing something in our level or when working with blueprint actors, this works in a very similar way. This tells us a bunch of different things about the material. And we can get very specific, but most of the settings that you will work with is that part at the top where it says material. And the material domain basically allows you to sort of say, what type of material is this? Is this a user interface material? Is this a post-process material? Is this a decal or a surface? Most actors that you will apply a material to will just use this surface material domain. And as you can see, once I'm changing the domain, this output node sort of changes with that in the process as well. We also have a blend mode where by default it's on opaque. We can change it to masked. That means either something is visible or is not. If we change this preview to a plane, so now we have a little plane here, and we set the blend mode to masked. I can show you an example. But if we take a very obvious example, I'm going to look for the Unreal Engine logo, which is the Unreal Engine 4 logo, but that's okay. And drag that into the mask. Suddenly, we only see part of the plane. And that's because in some cases, think about foliage, that sort of thing, you have your foliage painted onto a texture. And then maybe you have grass, so you have the shape of grass in the texture itself, and then your grass is just a simple plane. So by setting the material blend mode to masked, I can suddenly use texture data to sort of say, okay, what of this thing is visible and what is not visible. What you can also say is translucent. This is more heavy on performance. If I were to drag this in there, then similar end result, but there's bigger performance overhead because when you're saying masked, either something is visible or it's not. And when we say translucent, it can also mean that something is partially visible. So if we were to multiply this with a 0.1, and I'll go into details about how I just did that in a second, we can sort of see it's still there, but we can also look through it. So it needs to render things multiple times. This makes it heavy on performance. And if you can use masks, you should use masks. Then we have additive, modulate, alpha composite, and alpha holdout, but these top 3 are the ones that you'll be confronted with most often as a game designer. Now, you just saw me drag in a texture. You just saw me drag in a multiply node. How did I get those? Well, I use shortcuts, but there are a lot of nodes that we can use, and definitely not all of them have shortcuts. In the top right, we can find a palette, and now that's open. I can actually pin that as well if I wanted to, so I always have that open. And here you can see all the different things that you can use. You can just drag any of these in, read up about them. These are ones that you'll commonly use. We can also see them numbered out. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So they all look very similar, right? This is pretty much your float. It's called a scalar or constant. This is a 2-factor, so 2 values, red and green. This is a 3-factor, red, green, and blue. And this is a 4-factor, red, green, blue, and an alpha. And these top nodes, the white ones, they are a combination of everything that comes below. So this is both red and green. This is both red, green, and blue all together. So we just enter the base color, but we could also do that here in a constant. Make that blue, so it's a bit more obvious. And now we can sort of connect them similar to how we would connect a blueprint. And yeah, we can apply a base color. You can also just enter in the values here. I think I'll go back to a sphere right now here in the top. So now we have a sphere again. And let's play around with some of the other values. And as a second, we have metallic. Now this can either be 0 or 1. Something is metallic or it's not. And you can place a value here. If I were to say 1, you can sort of see the visuals change a little bit. I'm going to change it back to a sphere here in the top. This looks way more metallic, and if I put it on 0, we can suddenly see it's not metallic at all. You can also use a texture. That means that some spots will look metallic and others won't. Like if we were to use the Unreal Engine texture, suddenly we see that on top of it, some parts metallic, the white parts, because white in this case equals 1, black equals 0. A similar process for specularity. So how specular a surface is, by default it's 0.5. If I were to make this 0, very matte. If I were to use this texture again, we can sort of see, okay, now there's specularity to the UE4 parts. So to put this on a plane, it's a bit harder to see. It's the way light interacts with it. There is a close relationship between specularity and roughness. Like we have now parts that are specular, and the roughness sort of determines how smooth something like that is. How much does it act as a mirror? So by default, it's 0.5. And if we were to put this on 0, then suddenly we can see the reflection in here a lot more clearly. We can actually see what is behind us in there. And if we were to put this on 1, then suddenly it's very flat, right? Very muted. So there's a lot of different visuals that you can already create with these few settings. And the palette here is really useful in case you want to learn more about all the common nodes that you can call in materials. And the ones that I used in this video so far are more math related. So we can see math here. We have an add and a divide that we have keybinds for. I use the multiply, so I can just hold down M and click, and then I have to multiply. I also use the texture one, which is a little bit further down the list. Basically allows me to hold down T and click, and then I get a little texture sample. But as you can see, there's a lot more things that you can call on: scene texture, scene color, texture collection, texture object. If you work with materials, you'll learn about these things as you go. But hopefully you're able to see that this is a pretty accessible tool, and we can create some pretty distinct visuals in a short amount of time. So I'm going to use the multiply. Well, now for a final step, I want to make that black background a different color as well. So I'm going to copy paste this color node. I'm going to make that orange. And now we need to add these two colors together. Maybe you already spotted it, but there's also a node for add. And if I hold A and click, then I have this add node here. Let's make orange the base. And now when we add them together, we can sort of see the orange working, and then the blue coming in is just not as blue anymore. That's because we're adding a complete orange surface, and then on top of that, we're adding blue. What we could do here is actually subtract the shape from the orange. So similar process, we multiply with the logo, but instead of the logo, we're going to say 1 minus. So now we have that very clear distinction of orange and blue. And now we can actually start applying this material. And there's different ways that you can do this. We can drag this material onto a static mesh or onto an actor. We can select the actor, and then in the details panel, we can look for our material, or we can drag it onto it, or we can select the mesh that we want and press this little arrow icon, and that will assign the material that is currently selected. And now when I press play and I pick up the rifle and I shoot the cubes, we have a clear distinction between floor, walls, and dynamic objects. That concludes our little intro to the basic material editor. We've had a look at the material editor and this final output and the most common settings that we will have to deal with as designers, and we applied that material to our static meshes in the example environment. I'm now going to open the next map in 01 functions, and that is what the next video will be about, and I hope to see you there. Thank you.